Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Dan McKee, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Rhode Island, and we're here every Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock to talk about the driving issues in our state, whether it's on small business issues or health-related issues with the COVID-19. And tonight we're going to be very honored to have a historian in many respects, talking about the slave history, Rhode Island slave history, and tomorrow an event that he's hosting in Newport at Bowen's Wharf to put one of the medallions there that recognizes the spot where many of the slave trade boats came in to Rhode Island in the 18th century, and we're going to hear all about that. And then we're also going to talk to two of our friends that were on weeks ago, that both Nyru Ben and also Dimitri, who is Ashby, who's going to be with here today, and kind of give you a little update. They were some of the youth organizers on a peaceful protest that marched to the State House, talking about the racial injustice and that has surrounded events around the country, including in areas where we're hearing about every single day. And in terms of, so they're going to give us a little update on what they've been up to, and an event that they're starting to organize, a unity event that I think we want to hear about, and we're going to want to support. So if we could start off, Ben, maybe we could bring, I don't think we have Charles here yet, but we got Rosa. Hi, Rosa.
Yes.
From our office.
Hi,
And Dimitri,
hi.
How you doing, guys?
Good.
And,
Wonderful.
Yeah, so Rosa, I want to, you can kind of talk a little bit about Charles before we hook him in here, but you also are working with him on a committee on things that work in some of the senior population and some of the health needs in particular in the Newport area. But tell us a little bit about how you met Charles and the type of activities he's in, and how you serve on a board with him right now, helping out people in Rhode Island. By the way, Rosa is one of our members of our staff that I get to work with every day for the last almost 6 years now. So welcome aboard, Rosa.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is wonderful. I always happy to see other people participating, especially Dimitri. It's a pleasure to share this space with you as well. I'm very proud of doing this type of job at the Lieutenant Governor's office. And like you mentioned, Lieutenant Governor, I am working with Charles, and we belong to the ICI, which is a group that oversees all the services for the seniors. And it has to do a lot with the Medicare portion of the benefits, the medical benefits for the people. Charles is a man of many hats.
Yes.
And I just found out not long ago that he was also the nephew of the former, the first Black mayor that Newport ever had. So that also was like, it took me, that was a surprise to me too, because I did not know much about the history. And talking to Charlie, you have to talk with him for more than just a few minutes, because he has a rich history on all the things that he have been involved. In particular, this project with the medallion, this is a very significant event that is celebrated. They put the stamp, the historical stamp, in all the places that somehow history has intertwined with the Black community, where slave was a site of significance, and they recognize those places. And I really love for him to explain the history behind that movement, being the executive director of this organization. And it's very significant. And I think chose Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee to place that medallion in Newport. It's vital importance, especially for what is going on now. And I'm happy that Dimitri is here, because this is a good connection between the millennial and the seasoned millennials.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what your term is now, but Charles and I are coming from the same generation. But yeah, Rosa, when he comes on, we're going to have hopefully talk. Hope he's going to be able to connect in shortly. I know he's trying
Is
to.
that me? Am I on?
That's him right there. I'm talking
Okay.
to Charles.
Charles, good to see you. Dimitri, we're gonna get back to you, but I want to just quickly introduce you before you get off. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, quickly introduce you.
Yeah,
there you
All
are.
right, there I am.
Yeah, Charles, we're going to get you in 1 second, but I want to just let the people know that Dimitri was on our show a few weeks back. He was instrumental in working with a core group of people to do a very peaceful march at the State House over the issues that had to do with George Floyd and other related areas, and they did a fantastic job. And you're going to get to talk directly to Dimitri in about 20 minutes. But Dimitri, just give us a quick update that you were talking about when we had lunch about a week ago. You said that you were working on a unity project that I want to get the wheels rolling here, thinking about.
Definitely. So the unity concert is basically something that we're thinking about putting together, where we just want to bridge the gap on the disconnect and the issue of disconnect that we see in the communities everywhere. Nyru and myself are both performers, and we understand that music is something that brings everybody together, no matter race, creed, or religion. So we believe that if we're able to come together and host some sort of entertainment concert where people can just safely come and people can all from all different demographics just mingle in one giant pool and understand that, we're not as different as you may think that we are, or as like the world or the media may portray us to be. That's basically like our spearheaded plan right now. Things are going pretty well with that. We talked to the State House. Nyru has a lot more information that he's definitely going to want to share later. So I don't want to spill all.
No, that's the teaser. That's the teaser. But I wanted to bring it up. Hopefully, Charles is still listening, because if he can come back on for a second here, Charles. Before we get into the medallion at work and some of the other things, I've read a little bit. You have a little bit of a music event planning background, don't you?
Yes, I was originally been for 40 years with Warner Atlantic and Elektra Records.
Yeah, and so tell us some of the artists that you've been worked with during that time frame that you were, working on their events.
Well, let's see. I worked with Luther Vandross. I learned before he passed. I worked with Gladys Knight. I've worked with Chaka Khan extensively. I worked with. I started out with Grandmaster Flash and Run DMC and produced them in roller rinks, and that's how far back I go.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons I wanted to, Charles, connect you in with Dimitri and Nyru, and then we're going to take them off the stage right now and put them in the back room, but we're going to come back and talk about that unity event with you and Nyru. Hello, Nyru, how you doing? We'll see you in a bit. Yeah, Charles, welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, and
okay, yeah.
You're going to like those two young men. They got a really good head on their shoulders, and they are going to be leaders that we're going to really be relying on in the state of Rhode Island over the next, generation or more. So, but I wanted to start off. You see Rosa on the screen there, and I do want to talk about the medallion and that work, which is really, really important, especially in the context of the things that are going on right now. But just give us a quick overview of the executive board that you vice chair, and the work that group does with you and Rosa. Just to give you I want to see that people get the depth of who you are. And first, tell us a little bit about. I kind of, beat you to the punch on the music stuff, but give us a little introduction on yourself, Charles, and the background you have at Rhode Island. And shift to Rosa and talk about that, and then we're going to talk about this Rhode Island Slave Medallion that you've been working on for the last few years.
Well, I'm the executive director of Rhode Island Slave History Medallions, and we've been working on this for the last 4 years, and we've placed 2 medallions in the state of Rhode Island so far. One at Patriots Park, which is the location of the first battle in Rhode Island, where blacks, whites, and Indians worked together to fight the British and the Hessians, and helped our troops escape. It was like a Dunkirk, if you might call it that.
I think that was the article that I was reading on the Portsmouth medallion, and there you are in all your
Well,
glory.
yes, that's the medallion that was the gravestone that was
Yes.
carved by Pompey Stevens. And what I did is I used to play in that graveyard. And one day I turned around and realized I was playing in a field of angels. So I took that image and created the medallion that is it's an angel because I mean, and let me explain it to you like this. Imagine that we are trying to send a message across the state of Rhode Island about the injustice of slavery and how that all of us, all of the state of Rhode Island contributed to the economic development of this state through the free labor of slaves and African and Indians. So to be able to like reverse this, call it karma, and bring, let's celebrate the whole fact that we are one group, one human race, all working together for a greater good of the purpose. It's something like a John Lewis, the late John Lewis would say, you know, that's why I've decided to make the image. John Lewis would always call it the good trouble. It would make good trouble,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a troubling history, but we're making good of it. And I'm so glad that Dan, that you have and I have met, and Rosa, and we've been able to sit down together and really see the value of working as a collective. And this is what we're trying to do with these medallions. The first one was that Patriot Spark. Yeah.
The Penny Stevens, former slave, correct?
Yeah, Pompey Stevens was a slave.
Pompey Stevens, former slave, who chiseled out gravestones for, in one particular I read, for his brother.
Yes, he did. His brother is, and I think that was in 1878. Yes, he carved this medallion for his brother Cuffy Stevens. And it was a soul effigy, because at that time they believed that when you died, your soul was brought, and that was the colonists and the Africans. Your soul was brought to heaven on the wings of angels. Yeah, so he carved this in 1768 for his brother.
1768, and I think it's going to come to an awakening to many people to hear that there was a slave in Rhode Island, and more than one, and that graveyard that you were walking through was well, the way I read it was described as for the forgotten souls of basically many of them were slaves.
Yes, that's God's little acre. That many of the people that helped develop this state were buried there. And across the state, you'll see these angel images in a lot of the grave sites, because this is really a symbol of let's call it a transformation of our consciousness, so that we can look at each other and ourselves as one people.
Yeah, and so, Charles, that's going to come to news to people. And so with your knowledge on the issue of the background that Rhode Island has, the history of Rhode Island, that it was very involved with slavery, right? And especially in the context of the discussion that's going on today in Rhode Island, and the significance of a word like plantations in our name. You were also, what I was reading as well, Ben, put up the picture of the harbor, the headline of in Newport. So this is where we'll be tomorrow with that medallion and at Bones Wharf. But tell us the history of Newport in terms of the the ships that came in over a period of time, how many times, how many trips there were, and what, the people that, the slaves that were on those boats, and where did they go, and give us a little history on that, okay?
Whew, boy, Dan. Where do I begin? Well,
Yes.
I
think people need to hear that, because they don't. There's still the majority of the people in the state of Rhode Island don't realize this history, and what you're doing is so important work, and you are doing this for the last few years, and that education process is a very important one, in particular with the discussion that's going on about racial justice today.
Oh, well, yes. In the terms of racial justice today, I mean, it's very difficult for you to understand the problems that we're having today without understanding the past. And through our Slave History Medallion project, you're able to reach back into the past because it's a place-based education program. And Bowen's Wharf, for example, is a place where slaves were brought in from the islands and sold there. It was actually the property of our first governor, Governor Benedict Arnold. And that property was so huge, it started at Bellevue Avenue and went all the way down to the docks. And when he died, he passed that property to his descendants, which were women. And these women then let me explain how that happened. Their descendants died. So and this is another part of the injustice, because women really weren't equal in the eyes of the public at that time. Their properties were given to their men, almost like a dowry. So they inherited not only the wharf, Bowen's Wharf, but they inherited the slaves that were their forefathers that went with them. And that's why Bowen's Wharf is so important in just one of the stories of one slave of four slaves that were there. I'm trying to find the exact location that they are on.
While you're looking for that, Charles, just the magnitude of what you're talking about. I had read there was over 2,000 ships that harbored in Newport that were directly involved with the slave trade. Yes. 2,000. This is not something that happened once. This is 2,000, transports from the island of slaves into Rhode Island, and that's what you're talking about right now. Rosa, you got to, Charles, thank you, and Rosa, thank you for introducing me to Charles, because he's got a wealth of knowledge here in Rhode Island, and on this issue, I'm sure that you're very proud of the fact that Charles is, leading the charge here.
Definitely, to me, has been a pleasure. And like I stated before, it's not enough just a few minutes talking with Charles. We need an extensive period of time to get enriched by this history right here in Rhode Island. It's like, I love Newport anyways, but it just makes me want to go even more and study and listen to Charles. You should be a storyteller.
Oh, well, it's amazing how many stories that I've been hearing. I've been bombarded with this unvarnished truth about this information. I mean, Bowen's Wharf is just since we want to get back to them. I mean, the ships that were the Bessie and that was brought. We have actual documentation from there. From the 1774 about the sale of slavery at Bowen's Wharf, about the triangular slave trade, where you hear the ships went out to Africa, got slaves, brought the slaves back to the West Indies, traded the slaves for sugar that they brought up to Newport to their rum distilleries, distilled the rum, then put the rum on the boats, brought them back to Africa, bought more slaves. Yeah, I mean, this was the triangular slave trade. And this is what Newport was engaged in. And this is what happened at Bowen's Wharf. There was, and everyone was involved. The rope makers, the sail makers. I mean, and this particular building that that the medallion has been placed on is where these things were stored.
It seems like that was the beginning of the port commerce.
Yes, that was the commerce of the times, and it's really ironic because the slaves that were enslaved were forced to actually work there so that they could enslave others of their own. And this is the ironic and kind of tragic part of it, because imagine not having the freedom or the rights to even stand up for your freedom or your rights, and be in a position where you contributed to your own abuse.
And so, Charles, and I want to just, we could go on for this forever, and you've got it, but, you got the information. But I think that the other news is like with and I'm going to get his name wrong again, Mr. Stevens, was it
Pompey Stevens? Yes.
He was a slave here in Rhode Island, physically in Rhode Island. He wasn't one of the slaves that came on the boat and got transitioned and sold elsewhere. They were physically here in Rhode Island. So talk quickly about the fact that you described the boats that have come in, the ships that have come in, and the fact that the slaves were transported out of Rhode Island. But we also had a history of slaves here in Rhode Island, as Pompey Stevens represents, correct?
Yes, Pompey Stevens worked at the John Stevens shop, which is, by the way, still exists today. And he was a slave of the Stevens family. So was his brother Cuffy, that he carved this medallion for. And the real significance, remember, in order to carve a gravestone, you had to be able to read and write. So these slaves were not just ignorant people. These were educated people, because at that time, a lot of the colonists couldn't read or write. So this person slaved at the shop until he died, was not allowed to even own his own children and family. And at one point, he turned around to Mr. Stevens and he said, "Look, okay, I'm going to carve all these things for you. And this is an act of defiance," he said, "but this one I'm carving, this is for my brother Cuffy." And that's what he did. And if he hadn't signed it, we would have never known that these gravestones were carved by a slave. And that's the significance of Pompey Stevens and the effort that he put in. It's a subtle defiance that all of us need to have if we're going to stand up against injustice and domination controlled by forces that are basically exploiting us, all of us.
Yeah, and then so the slaves at that time here in Rhode Island, I've read as well, were forced to build courthouses, municipal buildings as well. So they weren't just engaged by property owners or business people or whatever you want to call them, but they also were activated on behalf of the general public.
Well, the Colony House was built by slaves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first capital of the state of Rhode Island, and they were called their servants, and they were paid for their work, but they didn't receive the money. Their masters received the money. They were always enslaved, no matter how you want to couch it. They were the slave labor, forced labor, where your talents and your economic development was not your own. So that if we look at the economics of today, that wealth that could have been theirs if they were allowed to harvest it for themselves has been given to others. And you see some of the most wealthy people with the biggest names in this town All of their riches came from this forced labor.
And then, kind of, there's so much to be said there, and you're doing that. But tell us a little bit about, the project, the Medallion project that you are actively involved in, and where I'll be with you tomorrow in Newport. But your goals of your organization are to educate, and there's the medallion that I think that we'll be seeing tomorrow that you've sent us. But give us a little idea of currently right now, the last few years, starting with Portsmouth. What is your goal in terms of this medallion project?
Well, thank you, Dan. And one of those issues is that there were 25 cities in the state of Rhode Island that were involved, are slave-related locations, and we're planning on putting a medallion to honor those that cause in each one of the cities here. I mean, just today, I just met with Jamie at the Jamestown city manager, and he wants to have a medallion placed in Jamestown, just like we did in Portsmouth, in the Wolf Tavern in Bristol, at Linden Place. They want medallions. The Stephen Hopkins House in Providence, they want a medallion. And they don't just want a medallion, they've signed letters of intent asking me to supply them with medallions. So it's been a difficult task building it, raising the money, creating these things. They're made out of bronze, they're very expensive to make, and they're cast each one by hand. And each one has a QR code placed in them, so that when you go to the medallion and you, with your phone, since we live in a technological age, and you put your phone to the medallion, right where you're standing, the information, the historically accurate information about that location comes up on your phone. The significance of that is our young people live on their phones.
Definitely.
So wherever they are, they can get the information about their history right there where they're standing.
Yeah, so let's bring this back. That's unbelievable what you're doing, and your vision on there, Charles. To be out in front of that is going to be so valuable to us as we continue the discussions that are, front and center today because of the George Floyd issues and other things like that. Also, with the COVID-19 and the impact that we're having on minority communities in particular, there's a thread that can be tied that can make a connection. And Rosa is, living with that. So Rosa, tell us a little bit about, what you represent, a lot of the Hispanic community, being from Dominican and Islands, and tell us the relevance of what Charles is working on that puts you in a spot that you can start, that be relevant in terms of like make sure that everybody is, not just treated fairly, but we're doing right by people, right? We're doing right by everybody.
That is right. So the importance of that I see as a former teacher, because I'm a teacher too. So I see the value in the history of the slaves that also they did stop in the Dominican Republic because of the sugar cane. So we did have a lot of slaves that stopped there and to help the people cultivate the sugar cane there. So my quest is to find out how connected are we from the Caribbean are connected to this triangle, because at some point we intertwine. And I want to find that. I think it's fascinating that we are united in history because of the people that traveled across our waters to connect in the triangle. We were part of that triangle too. So I am very curious to see how can we connect in history. And as we speak, at this moment, there are discussions going on in a Zoom meeting, just like this one, and they are also doing live. The leadership of the minority community, they are exploring some of the connections that are history that connect with one another, and how, and it was interesting when you were discussing the slaves were forced to enslave others. So that resonates with me because that's part of our history too as well. So it's a connection. It's unbelievable to me. How can we connect through history, through social and community services? And that's how we connected, because we share the same interest and knowing where we're coming from. So you can make a decision based on the history, so we don't have to repeat it again, based on the knowledge, so we can progress. And this could be a bridge that will unite us to recognize the root causes of discrimination and abuse and all the patterns that have to be provided from those times to now.
Yeah, and Charles, let me just kind of complete that thought, because I want to bring Dimitri and Nyru on. You know, I and Rosa knows this. I say, look, there's 39 cities and towns. Every town's
Yes.
important. People live in those. Everybody who lives in those communities is important. The communities that make up those communities are important. And the more we know about the communities that make up our communities, the better we are to meet the challenges of providing really good education opportunities, providing real good economic opportunities, providing safe communities for people to live in. The work you're doing is that connector, and what Rosa just described is to try to really do what many people say, okay, we like everybody, but are we really connected in a way that we actually move each other forward? And until we understand everybody's story, do you understand my story? Do you understand my family story? You know, in terms of that, the more we understand about each other, the more solid that foundation is to build off of. And that's where I see the value of the work that you're doing, Charles. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, you know, thank you, Governor. And to answer your question, Rosa, my name is Carlos Leon Robertos, from Caracas, Venezuela. And I
Can
was
you
fortunate.
believe this?
I'm fortunate enough. I'm American, born in America. I'm fourth generation here in Newport, but I traced my family's roots, and I've actually lived in North Africa. I've lived in Caracas. I learned to speak Spanish. I know mi primos.
I know. That's why we started our conversation, so we end up being primos or cousins.
That's right, because what happened was when the slaves were brought to Venezuela, they were thrown overboard to work into the chocolate plantations.
Yes.
And whoever swam and made it to shore, they were allowed to be slaves. That's how harsh this slavery is. But thank God when we got to Venezuela and we worked in the chocolate fields, there were the indios and who intermarried with the slaves, and we all ran away together.
Well, Charles, I'm glad you're here. Rosa, thanks for spending the time. We're going to bring Dimitri and Nyru on now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosa. Yeah, so I wanted to introduce you, Charles, to Nyru and Dimitri. I gave you a little bit of that background, how I met them at an event at the State House a month and a half ago or more, and how we met and talked, and we really compared notes, and they were very involved in that demonstration, that protest at the State House. That was a very peaceful one. And I would say, what do you think, Nyru? At least about 10,000 people were there. And that's probably a first in Rhode Island to have that many people at an event like that. So, Nyru, just introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll go to Dimitri. And then I want you to interact here with Charles, because you represent a younger generation than Charles and I represent. And we want to make sure that we're making those connections all the way around the board.
Hey, one, thank you for the time, and I agree 100%. Thank you for the opportunity and for the platform, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I think, one, to just piggyback off of what you said, that day was definitely very historic. 10,000 people definitely showed up that day. I don't know if that'll make the cut for the things that Charles has seen, you know what I'm saying? But I definitely think we made history that day. I think we did all right. But my name is Nyru, born and raised in Providence, Rhode Island. I am Liberian. American, first generation. Went to Catholic school, private Catholic school my whole life. Also attended LaSalle Academy. Ran track. Got a track scholarship. My thing. We talk about that. Attended URI for a little. Also, I'm a poet, hip hop artist, entrepreneur. Also, demonstrator, activist within the community. Just using my platform to spread peace and love, awareness, and taking initiative to do my part. Hence, why a lot of this took off. Met Lieutenant Governor at one of the press conferences, but prior to that was at several protests and rallies and just taking initiative and doing my part to help guide the energy. And that's kind of what I've been doing thus far. And we'll talk more about the Unity Benefit Concert, just from my assessment of the energy and the climate in the city and in the state. And just kind of, like I said, doing my part to kind of help unify the city and heal the community.
Yeah, we met at one of the small businesses in Rhode Island. I had some chickens and waffles, and they were very good.
Yes.
Right? And so, give them a shout out. Give them a shout out in terms of the business that we were at.
Oh yeah. Shout out to Bucktown, definitely
Yes.
Providence original. Also, co-Black owned, doing a lot of good things for the community.
Yeah, we got to reach back to them because we're working on a lot of small business issues, Nyru, and trying to help these small businesses in Rhode Island, and again, trying to make that connection, between the minority businesses and also the non-minority businesses. And there is really, just like that unit, just like the event you had there, the protest, the march. You had many people from minorities, but also non-minorities that were mixed there. The same thing's happening right now in the business community. There's a real interest in trying to connect in, especially as we face this crisis that we all have. No inside dining at that restaurant. No, we had to take our meal and go to a park bench and eat it on the park bench, right? So, we gotta stick together on many places. Yeah, Bucktown. We've got Bucktown there. Thanks very much. Yeah. Now, Dimitri, give us a little overview. So, as an introduction, I think Charles Surrey said hi to you, but then I want to engage you three in a conversation. And I don't know how we would describe ourselves, Charles, but we're like, we're certainly a little older than these two gentlemen, but we have some of the same goals, I'm sure. Go ahead, Dimitri.
100%. Charles, again, it's an honor to meet you. I loved hearing what you've been doing in the city and just in the community. I think it's major. My name is Dimitri. I am born and raised in Providence. I've been in Providence my whole life. I'm a first generation French Jamaican American. My dad's full Jamaican. My mom is French. I grew up, went to LaSalle as well, where I met Nyru. We've been intertwined for a while. I played football all the way up into college. I went to the University of Rhode Island and studied film media studies. And right now I currently am an entertainment entrepreneur. I spend a lot of my time just focusing on entertainment on all varieties, whether it be radio, television, movie. I currently work in the movie industry, local New England film. I've worked on Nosferatu, which is now playing on AMC season 2, and I've worked on this movie Free Guy, which was filmed in Boston, which is going to be premiering in December. So we've heard, but we're not really sure on the full release date of that. But currently, I work in the movie industry, and I just spend a lot of my time just focusing on all different varieties of entertainment.
And Dimitri, you had a little run in the AU basketball, which I coached a lot of AU basketball. I thought I probably coached more games right at the Nunnaconnecut Center in Providence than anybody who didn't live in Providence. I think I have that distinction. I must have coached 100 games or more in that gym and met people who are a little older than you are, but not much older than you are, and they're all very interested in the work that you're doing. Charles, give a weigh in here a little bit with these young kids. I call them young kids. Please don't be offended, but you are a lot younger.
No.
So weigh in. What do you see here in terms of like Rhode Island's future, and how do we connect them in with the things you're working on?
Well, I see my young brothers right here. I mean, because back in the day, because you guys, when you're talking about my music, you're talking about call and response when you talk about African music. I've lived in Africa. I was given a name, Hadim Bouquet, when I was staying at, and yeah, I saw you smile. You know what that means, because when you get back to the motherland, you've been home, and once you've been home, you're changed for life. There's no way that the place that I stand is holy ground. Okay. And so when I'm talking to you guys, I'm reaching across the aisle of multi-generational relationship, because I can bring to you guys all of that knowledge and all of that information that I gained in 40 years with Warner Atlantic Electric Records, when hip hop music was, I mean, all we could perform was in gyms and roller rinks. That was where they allowed us to perform. I had to leave because, I mean, when gangster rap came in, I was selling T-shirts to white kids. You know, it wasn't even about our music no more. You know, it was about stealing rhymes, and we lost that call and response that made the energy. I mean, I've been in Africa where I've heard drums change people's minds. And if you want to do something with the music and with the art and the talent that lives within your soul, that's why they call it soul music. And that's why I created a soul effigy, angels across the world. That's what we can do. And we can do that together. I happen to, while I was with Warner Brothers, I was trained at the National Academy of TV Arts and Sciences. I do and edit videos. So in case you don't know, there is talent. And I mean, I'm so glad to see you guys. There's talent out there that is from us, from within us, that is tapped, but we ain't got a chance to do it. The reason I'm doing it is because, you know, I've just fought my way and survived. And let me tell you, a lot of my brothers didn't make it. Okay, I'm out of Newark, New Jersey. When I was when I was teaching school at Chad's Science Academy, we had to go around and make sure the chop shops didn't steal our cars. So we had to get our brothers together to make sure our group, if you get my drift, was supportive of us against those other groups that weren't quite as supportive of us trying to make a difference in our community. So we had to engage in opportunities to make sure that our own people understood that where we stood was holy ground.
So
And
Charles,
that's what I can bring to you.
yeah, and Charles, so I've invited Nyru and Dimitri to come to the, to the Medallion event tomorrow, the Rhode Island Slaves Medallion Project event. So hopefully they're going to be able to work at their schedules. I'll be certainly figuring out a way to have them jump in with me somewhere. We'll meet somewhere in Providence, maybe at the State House or something like that. But let them tell you a little bit about their concept of this Unity project, and then maybe give them a little advice right now. But I think that we want to be supportive of this effort. As I explained earlier, both Dimitri and Nyru, with a handful of people, really were the go-to people on that night in Providence, where thousands and thousands of people came in, and they marched for change, in terms of making sure that that we're actually figure out some way to actually work together, so you don't have to worry about protecting yourself up against people who are trying to cause you harm, right? So Nyru and Dimitri, just explain a little bit about what your concept is, and based on the fact that you were very involved with that demonstration, that protest march back in June. I know that you've got the ability to do this, but just give a little conceptually what you're trying to make happen, Nyru, that you explained to me, and then Dimitri can weigh into.
And I know we could definitely speak for like everything that we've seen that's been going on, that definitely things could easily get out of hand, and the energies and the tensions are pretty high. The day that we had gone to the press conference, the day that we met, our intentions were kind of just to observe, but some of the energies there, got a bit, for lack of a better term, carried away and just driven to, intervene. And a lot of people spoke, and there was a bit of an uproar. And then that's kind of throughout that, I was trying to execute what I felt like my position there was for, which was to help guide the energy and make sure that both parties and everyone on any side is able to be heard, but especially the people that feel like they're being unheard, they have the opportunity to kind of have their thoughts and anger or energies articulated properly. Even at the first protest, when the windows had gotten smashed, I was one of the people there, one of the individuals there, at the standoff with the state police and the protesters, and just helping everyone on both sides and the reporters understand that that these people just want to be heard, and they feel like they're not being heard, and these people are doing their job, and they're prepared for what they feel like might happen, and no side is really trying to cause harm to the other. So like I said, I was there to help guide the energy, and just from everything I've seen with all that's been going on, I've seen a lot of division. We've been trying to bring a lot of unity together. I've seen a lot of scattered attempts and scattered efforts. Though we've had a lot of accomplishments, there's still a lot of different groups working towards the same goal, but not necessarily working together. So my goal with the Unity benefit concert, I want to something along the lines of heal the city or heal the community. I really wanted to use that as something that could be all inclusive and bring everyone together, because everyone loves music, and also positive music. And in a way we can kind of come out, also being in phase 3 now, being able to have something where a lot of people could come out and be around, not necessarily be close to each other, but kind of remember that Providence, Rhode Island, or just even Rhode Island in general, we're very unique, we're very different. I have, in my friend group alone, we have different faces. I know in many different friend groups, and even in this call alone, we have different faces and different friend groups from different backgrounds and ethnicities. And I want us to be able to show how different we are with this benefit concert. And we don't have to have any profits or proceeds, and they can go to any necessary organization or attempts to help dismantle or help aid anybody. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Yeah, and then we're gonna need some guidance because of the COVID-19 and the impact that it has. We don't want to do anything that's going to interrupt our economics, but this is a front and center issue. So we'll have to figure out, we have to figure out how to actually conduct that affair. Tomorrow, Charles is going to have his event, and he's going to have the social distancing. He's going to have some media there. He'll get the attention there, but he's also very aware that, hey, we're in extraordinary times on this health issue as well. But and I also have a good friend that actually has created and logoed out a Unity as a theme of his product line, and I'm going to be in touch with him because I think that might be an interesting connection, and I think he'll be very interested in because he's a Black American that has been involved with the same things you're talking about, a little older than right in our age group, Charles, but he's very interested in working with the idea of unity as a theme. So we'll track him back with you guys too and see whether anything can come of that. Dimitri, just give I think Nyru said it pretty well, but add to that a little bit, and then I want you and Charles, the three of you, to kind of have a little conversation about a unity. What would be the reason you would have it, and what would be the overall goal of something like that at this moment in time? Go ahead, Dimitri.
Definitely. So I think one of the main objectives with the Unity concert as well is also to just leave like a positive impact on the city and let people see, like our influence. We want to leave our mark in history as well. Similar to kind of like how Charles is creating the renditions of the Medallion. We want people to look back in history and see that, this event was created, by African Americans, people of color who are here to work and create change in the community in a positive direction. There are many times when people like us, we do things and we change genres and we make history, and that history gets rewritten or that history gets left out of certain things. So I definitely believe that this Unity benefit concert, we can make this like an annual thing, something that reoccurs every year, something that people understand, this is something that we're trying to do to bring all communities together, but it was created by this group of individuals who like left their mark on history almost, like we see that pretty much everywhere. There are a lot of times where people of color do things and then, history gets rewritten or gets changed and the real story doesn't get told. It gets lost in history. So we hope to, by having this concert, like we leave our mark, the message never change. Unity benefit will always be there. We don't want the name to ever change or go away. And we want people to know that like we are the people who are like focusing on like positive change in a positive direction. We want to sever that disconnect. So that's pretty much like the whole intent of the event in general. And we definitely believe that, with the correct support and the correct guidance, we can make it happen.
Yeah, and I tell you, one of the things, I know Charles go in, but I'm seeing different people kind of text here saying they want to help. So, this is why we have you on here to kind of create this energy that, again, there's a value, when I did our coaching in the AU, there was real value with, and I say that I had a United Nations on wheels for eight years or more. And there was such a value in having people learn each other's story and to back each other up and to really want to see, their teammates succeed. And you guys have both been involved in sports, and I'm sure Charles has as well. But sorry, Charles, go ahead. I know you had a thought. I shouldn't
No,
interrupt.
I just want to say to both, I want to speak for all three of us to you, Dan. And that is that I want to thank you for bringing us all of us together and being able to cross that, you call it an age gap, but I look at everybody as brothers. I mean, back in the day, there was no N word. There was only what's happening, brother. And that's who I'm talking to right now. And you just brought me, Dan, close to the brothers that I can work through and give my experience to. Man, I've done concerts where there was a run on the box office and they tore the box office to the ground. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about back in the day. Well, now I've got an opportunity to give you guys all my experience about how to. I'm a logistics guy. I work at Fort Adams. I've been there with where a guy handed me this guitar for the hold for this old guy, but the old guy was Chuck Berry. And when I gave him that guitar and he walked up on the stage, I like to fell out. The same thing with Little Richard. Little Richard come up and say, "Well, you have to take my pretty side," and I take a photograph. These are real brothers. They made a difference in life through their talent, just like you guys can do. And me, I'm fortunate enough to be a survivor where I can help you. Logistics is my thing. Yes, I've got cameramen and everything else down at Bowen's Wharf, but that's because it is no mistake. It's all been structured. It's all been programmed in advance so that you don't have those kind of problems, with security, because everybody is on the same page. And those that aren't on the same page, they can't come.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that simple.
I think that was the message that not only Dimitri and Nyru, and I met a couple of the other organizers of that event. 10,000 people, no problems. Very, very, very positive, but a very strong message, Charles. Very, very strong message, and it was delivered. And my goal here is, and I mentioned when I met with Nyru and Dimitri last week, to have that chicken and waffle, dinner, lunch, is to keep this conversation alive and not let it die. And I can use my position as Lieutenant Governor over the next 2.5 years and use forums like this. We've had multiple different forums already. We've had people on from different, on the policing issue, whether it's with police. I have the ability to bring in the leadership and policing in the state, whether it's with the Police Chiefs Association or whether it's national people who talk about biases in terms of policing and that type of thing. My goal here is to use this forum to tell the stories, Charles, that you told and Dimitri and Nyru are going to be telling, and then also try to make that impossible connect, so that we're all cheering for one another, and we all feel as though that we got something at stake when somebody does well. But understanding that certain people have more hurdles to jump than others, and yet the people like my family or my son and daughter, we're very proud of them. They've had hurdles to jump to get to where they go, but they wouldn't have as many hurdles as say some of their teammates that I coached. But we got to celebrate when anybody gets to that finish line. We got to celebrate, and people who have more hurdles to jump than others, we got to figure out how to take those hurdles down. Nyru was a track guy; he knows about hurdles. If he had to have, when he raced, and he set state records, by the way, Charles, when he was running, if you had to jump over 10 hurdles in your hurdle race, and somebody else who had similar speed had to jump over 5 hurdles, who would win that race?
Unfortunately, I'm still winning that race, but
you would not win that race.
Definitely.
I can tell you.
No, but yes,
equal talent, equal skill, who have more hurdles to jump than others are disadvantaged. And we need to understand that. So that's my goal here, is to kind of, make these conversations, continue. Tomorrow, Charles, tell Dimitri and Nyru and everybody who's listening to this right tonight what they're going to see tomorrow when I attend, and thank you for allowing me to talk a little bit. I certainly can't talk to the level that you can, but I definitely will speak in terms of like, let's make sure this message is heard loud and clear. But tell us, as we close out here, we got another 2 or 3 minutes, but tell us what Dimitri and Nyru are going to see. And their young people in their eyes are, very important that we have young people hear what you're going to be talking about tomorrow. So share with Dimitri and Nyru and the rest of the people here what they're going to see tomorrow at that ceremony.
Well, talking specifically to my young brothers, I'm saying like this. One of the issues that we really know about is after you jump those hurdles and make all those changes, this message can be lost or stolen. Well, the message that I've created is the slave history medallion, and it says slave history right across it, is in bronze. It's 18 pounds. It's very difficult to go anywhere. And if we have enough of them, repeated message, and I'll explain it like I learned in the music business. We used to rotate a story on 15 times, at drive times on the radio, so that after you heard it 15 times during the month, if the song didn't fly, you went to song number 2 on the disc, so that you made sure that you're not selling one message, you're selling an album. And we, as a group of people, as a group of people of color, and I'm talking about my Latin brothers too, and my Asian brothers, we're selling a message of people of color, because that's what this global economics is affecting, all of us. As I said, I'm so happy that I got a chance to live in Africa so that I could be at the motherland, so that I could know who I am and celebrate it. And I'm trying my best to make sure I bring a message so that all my young brothers know who they are and they can go right along with, because I'm not going to be here forever. But so I'm looking for those that will follow behind me, just like I've been behind my uncle, Paul Gaines, who was the first mayor of Newport, and John Lewis, the icon of civil rights movement. That's what we want to create. Leaders. We're there. All we need is a chance. And so if we work together, we're going to make that chance happen. And that's what I'm hoping for you guys. And when we get together, the two of us, and talk about this unity conference, and I can see how I can contribute to it and what I can add to it, we'll make that change.
Yeah.
We'll make $1 out of 50 cents.
Well, did you do 50 Cent concert too, Charles, or what?
Well, yeah, I worked a long time ago with 50 Cent. I wasn't all that happy with him at the time.
I tell you, some of the music had some colorful language in there. When I did coaching, I had to bring the kids to Walmart because they kind of bleeped out the colorful language. I said, hey, I'm happy to put that into, I had an expedition at the time and put 8 kids at a time in there, and they were listening to that music and everything else, which was fine with me. But yeah, it's a culture, and we got to be proud to work with everybody. So thanks so much for being here, Charles.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, because I'm about building our social consciousness, not tearing it down. And I don't even use a word that is going to say anything that besmirches my family, which is people of color. And of course, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about my mama.
There you go. Well, hey,
my mama didn't go for that.
You got to be good with your mamas. You can't be them upset. Hey, Charles, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Nyru and Dimitri will get in contact. We'll probably meet outside the State House somewhere in time to get down to Newport for that 11 o'clock ceremony. And thank you for your leadership, Charles. And Dimitri and Nyru, thank you for your leadership as well. Very important that we hit all the pieces. And I'm looking forward to working with your team. Nyru, I met one of the young ladies, just before the event started at that protest. I'm looking for making sure that we're meeting with everybody that's involved and contributing whatever you ask me to contribute. I'm happy to be there. I go where I'm invited, so invite me and I'll show up. All right.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate you being on our side. I mean, I really appreciate you being on our side, Dan.
Well, we'll be with you tomorrow. And Dimitri and Nyru, thank you for being here.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you again. No problem
Stay-
at all, yo. Appreciate the opportunity. Charles, thank
Stay
you again
safe
too
and
for all the
God
great
bless
work.
everybody.
Definitely,
Looking forward to
Charles.
seeing
Can't
you.
wait to talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you so much for all the knowledge, man. We appreciate it.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Dan.
so that's quite a combination there, and we'll be at the ceremony tomorrow, which is the Rhode Island slave ceremony, and down in Newport. Important story. It's certainly not meant to, in my opinion, diminish any good work that any community's doing or any family's doing. But we need to know our history. That history is so important for us to understand how everybody fits into this puzzle, this great American puzzle, this imperfect, perfect journey that we're on. That is, to understand where everybody's coming from, as Charles said, and our roots. The more we understand, the more opportunity we have to, perfect this democracy where all men are created equal, and the declarations that were made at the time when our country was founded. So anyways, and thank you to both Dimitri and Nyru. We'll be working with them on, and you'll hear more about that unity concert that will be coming up. So until we say hello again, thank you for coming into this community conversation. Have you heard something that interests you in this and you want to get involved in any way, call our office at 222-2371. We'll get back to you and we'll make the connections that you need. And we appreciate you listening in, and we appreciate everybody who's made comments. Share this video with as many people as you can in your community. Share it out, share it out, share it out, and we'll make sure that more and more people understand that there is a great possibility here in the state of Rhode Island right now. We're sitting on it. I can feel it, and we got this opportunity, and we want to take full advantage of it. So good night, everybody. Thank you.